My name is Marc Christiaens. I was born in September of 1960 in Belgium. In 1972, when I was 12 years old, I was sexually assaulted by a stranger. I got involved with a young people's group at the church. We were asked on the Sunday whether we wanted to give our lives to the Lord. And I remember sitting there with a young lady, and we were sitting there and I was holding her hand. We were asked to raise our right hand if we wanted to give ourselves to the Lord that day. I remember my hand separating from hers and just sitting there hovering for a second or two. It felt like eternity, but I raised my hand. And that was my start of my real journey to God and Jesus. But what I did was I started to drink continuously. And when I could drink, I was a 40-ouncer. But something happened that fall after the retreat. I remember sitting outside of a house in Scotland, Ontario, from a horse club meeting. I had a 40-ouncer between my legs, and it was about half gone. And I remember sitting there thinking, this isn't right. I've got to do something different. I'm talking and asking, where can I get help? I need some help with this. And I remember lifting the bottle up to my mouth to take another drink, and I couldn't get it past my nose. And at that point, I quit drinking. And I probably quit drinking for probably almost 4 to 5 years. Today, I honestly believe that the Lord was answering my prayers. He was eavesdropping on my own conversation to what I was saying about needing help and what can I do to solve this alcohol drinking problem I had. During the next several years, I met a high school sweetheart and we got married. Unfortunately, that marriage did not continue, and that after a number of years, we separated and parted ways. And in Owen Sound, I met another young lady. I married this young girl, and together we had another 2 children, and we raised the 4 of our kids together, the 2 from previous marriage and the 2 that we had naturally. So she was dealing with some issues for herself and started some counseling services. The counselor said to me the one day, he says, "You're not telling us everything." He says, "I'm picking up there's more than what you're telling us." And during that time, I told him what had happened to me some 35 years earlier. The counselor also encouraged me to tell my parents. So I eventually did tell my mom about it a month later, and her words to me I remember to this day. She says to me, "That explains a lot. We knew you were drinking, but we never knew why, and we never asked." That hit me hard. I never asked. I never asked for help. I never talked to anybody, but nobody asked also. So in December, Sandy had had enough this past year, and that I was crushed. I'm sitting there one Thursday afternoon, I just had a total meltdown. I started going through the phone book, and I ended up calling the church. And I talked to Dan on the phone. He offered me some help, some encouragement. So Dan met me in the foyer. We talked. Dan prayed for me. I got home that night with a Bible, and I prayed for myself for the first time. That following Sunday, I was at church, sitting in the back row of the pew. Bert Mankveld, who I know him from soccer, Bert tapped me on the shoulder and asked me how the family was. I stepped out and Bert followed. It was like God was standing there in front of me in the form of Bert, just to offer me comfort and support. The following Sunday, I went back to church again. Jason came in, him and his wife sat there in the front foyer, also talking. And it was like God had come again and talked to me because I was still struggling. The following Sunday, Jeremy Weber, Jason's brother, came out and he talked to me for an hour again after church. In February, I had a very special day. Our youngest son came in with his partner, bounced in beside me in the pew, and we started to sing the first hymn. I gave them both each a big hug and that for being there. So as we were sitting there talking, I had this very warm, strange feeling come over me that I'd never felt before of peace. Peace and joy at the same time. It was like all the burdens and what was happening in my life has now been surely taken off my shoulders. AJ standing beside me, and we're singing the song, and just at the start of the song, just as if I was releasing the hands when I first accepted the Lord some 40 years ago, AJ reached over and took my hand into his. It was like God slipping his hand back into mine. And at the end of the hymn, we just both looked at each other, tears in our eyes, and we just give each other a big, huge hug. And it was like the Holy Spirit had just totally entered my body. When I released that hand some 45 years ago, that the hand was now coming back to truly accepting the Lord back into my life. To be baptized is I guess it's going to be, it's a celebration for me of being born again, to die my old past and to be reborn again as a Christian. The one message I'm going to say to people is open your hearts, tear down those brick walls, and that there's only one person that's going to judge you, and that person is so merciful. Don't be ashamed. There's nothing in this earthly world that you can do that you can never be forgiven for.